All right, we're going to talk about systems of equations. We're going to look at it from a graphing approach just to kind of begin with. A system is basically when you have a graph with more than one line on that same graph. So like 2 lines or 3 lines or 4 lines. And there's different scenarios that can happen. I'm going to make 3 graphs down here to kind of show you the differences. And I'm going to make up my lines. They're going to be totally made up, but here's kind of the first scenario. You go and you get 2 equations for 2 lines and you do all the work and you draw your graph. And you end up drawing one line that looks, let's say, like this. And then you end up drawing some other line, maybe it ends up looking like this. Again, I'm just making these up. Your lines could look totally different than mine. But most of the time when you draw 2 lines on a graph, they end up crossing somewhere. And wherever that happens, wherever this point is, you can find it on the graph by counting over on the bottom here, wherever this is, it's at some x number, and counting up on the y-axis, and it's at some number, and you can say it crosses at x comma y, where x and y, there'll be 2 different numbers that you'll read off the graph. And that point where it crosses, we call that the point of intersection. The point of intersection. So there's going to be all these different problems that you'll read about where it'll say something like, find the point of intersection. Well, this is what they're talking about. Find where the 2 lines cross. And most of the time they're going to. Occasionally, you're going to get this second situation, kind of a weird case, where you're going to graph 2 lines, 2 equations, and maybe the first line ends up looking like this. And then you'll go ahead and you'll graph the second line, and it looks like this. Well, if you graph those 2 lines, think about where the point of intersection is going to be. It's not going to be anywhere. They're never going to cross each other. They're called parallel. They're side by side. They're going to go on forever and ever, both going up and down, and never going to cross. And if they're never going to cross, we say there's no solution for this graph. They never touch each other, so no solution. The third case is definitely probably the most weird case. You get 2 equations and you go to graph 2 lines, but they end up actually being the same line. Like you graph the first line, I don't know, maybe it looks like this. And then you go and you graph the second line, and it turns out that you didn't know when you looked at the equation, but they're identical. It's the exact same line. So here they are, 2 lines right on top of each other. One of the words we use for this is we say the lines coincide, because they're together, coincide. And if 2 lines coincide, they're overlapping, and someone asks you, well, where do those lines cross? You'd have to say everywhere. They're always crossing every spot. So if someone asks you, well, where's the point of intersection? You'd want to say it's everywhere. And the way we say that in math is all real numbers. Every place, all real numbers, is where it crosses. So those are kind of our 3 scenarios. Either you're going to have a point of intersection, no solution, or all real numbers. Now when it comes down to it, if you have to solve for the point of intersection, sometimes you can graph it and figure it out, but a lot of times you're not going to want to draw a graph. You want some faster way, some quick, speedy way of finding where's the XY point where it crosses. So we have all these different backup methods where you can figure out where does this happen, and you don't have to actually draw the graph because that gets tedious after a while. So you have 3 ways of figuring these out, and I'm going to write down here there's 3 methods to solving a system. There are 3 methods to solving a system. The first method is something called the equal values method. So equal values method. And we're going to go over that in the next video. So if you look ahead, I'm going to make a video for each of these methods. The second way is called substitution. A very good way of solving these things. And the third way is called the elimination method. Elimination method. So if somebody asks you to find the point of intersection, or to figure out what type of graph you have out of these 3 graphs up here, these are 3 different algebra ways of solving. to figure out that X and Y point where it crosses. And they're fast. The better you get at them, the quicker you are. It's usually 10 times better to do one of these than to try and like graph it all out by hand. That gets slow after a while. So in the next 3 videos, I'm going to go over how do you do these 3 methods. So definitely look ahead for those.